request, and I will
Go ahead.
and we will contact everybody about that. So welcome everybody on this wonderful day. The 21st, is it, depending on where we are.
Yeah.
And super excited to welcome a new, quite a new addition to our Zoom queue, but a wonderful, wonderful academic and person from Iran, Shaghayegh. I've practiced it so much and now I get it wrong. Shaghayegh Karimzadeh. So she said we are welcome to call her Sheen. And her presentation today is about what is your teacher persona when it comes to regulating emotions. And it's insights from her Q methodology study for her master's. So she holds a top ranked MA in teaching English as a foreign language from Iran University of Science and Technology. And with years of dedication to teaching English at the high school level, she has also excelled in academic leadership, earning recognition as the President of the Year for the Student Scientific Association and being honored as the leading student by IUST in 2024. In addition to her teaching and academic achievements, she serves as the chief organizer of the annual Persia Q Voyage Symposium. Isn't that amazing? Her primary research interests include Q methodology, emotion, and teacher education. And on this wonderful presentation, I also want to just welcome um, um, Dr. Diane Montgomery, Dr. Renata Alihani. I don't remember everybody's surnames. Um, I'm really happy to see that
Dr. Su.
Prof. Sue Ramlow is here. I'm just trying to go through all the names. Um, Dr. Seth is here, and quite a few uh, other people who've joined our Zoom queue. Which, of course, if anybody else wants to join, you're always welcome. And I'm sure there are some people from the Kent um, Kent listserv, the Q methodologists, and some special guests from Sheen's University. So over to you, Sheen. So,
Okay, so
Shaghayegh, are you going to share your screen after
yes,
you've done your welcome?
She'll let me know. Okay.
yes, okay. So let me share. Can you see my screen now?
Yes.
Yes, we can.
Okay. So hello everyone. Good morning, afternoon, or evening to all joining from different corners of the world. And first off, I have to thank, Rola, Vivian, Miko, and all the Zoom queue, incredible Zoom queue, for giving me the chance to present parts of my thesis to you today. It's such an honor to have this opportunity, and honestly, I'm in awe to just knowing that there are legends in the Q field, like Professor Ramlow and also like Dr. Montgomery and Aliani and so many wonderful Q researchers present at this session. Thank you. And also, I think my thesis advisor would be here soon, so I cannot see his name in presenters, but when he will be there, I will introduce him. His favorite examples is this, blind man story and the elephant. So it was really interesting that the previous session we were talking about it in the chat box. So before diving into the main presentation, I'd like to say that this is my very first Q study, and I hope that it will be viewed by kindness and openness. And I'm sure it will be, I'm sure that I can learn so much from all the Q experts here. So in this seminar, I want to ask you, what is your teacher persona when it comes to, regulating emotions? So To give you an outline of my presentation, first I will explain the background of my study, and then I'll highlight the significance of the study and then lay the underlying theoretical foundation for my research. Following it, I will state the problem and research question, and in details, I'll explain how I conducted my study, like the concourse development, Q sample construction, P-set selection, Q sorting procedure, and data analysis. And then we get to the interesting part, which is the findings. So, we all know that classroom is more than just a place for just learning. Just it's a dynamic environment where a teacher is obviously responsible for the academic aspects of it, but it doesn't end with that. Well, we have there's psychological dimensions underlying the teaching and learning process. And also, we have, the cultural aspects most definitely play a role here. And not to forget about the technical responsibilities of a teacher and how they must pay attention to the social dynamics within a classroom. But with all that, at the heart of all these dimensions in the classroom, there is emotional side of teaching, which is involved in all the conscious and subconscious actions in the classroom. So teachers on daily basis undergo different positive and negative emotions. So they could be like thrilled for, progress of learners, or they could be irritated with students' misconduct, or even like overwhelmed with marking. Experiencing all these emotions on a daily basis, teachers really need to acquire emotion regulation strategies to stay composed and manage their class. So, for my study, I used Gross Process Model 1998, which has 5 elements, which is situation selection, just choosing situation, and situation modification, modifying the situation. There is attentional deployment, which is, changing the attention towards something else. Cognitive change, basically known as reappraisal, and response modulation, also known as suppression. However, in 2021, Haydarnejad et al. Added a 6th element to this model called seeking social support. So I worked with all these 6 elements in my study. Basically, the first 4 falls under the category of antecedent focus emotion regulation, and the last 2, belongs to the family of response focused emotion regulation. So, with all that being said, are we ensuring that this heartbeat of education beats not too fast, not too slow, but just at the right pace? Well, unfortunately, not as much as we should. So, first of all, the emotional dimension of classroom have not received adequate attention compared to pedagogical aspects. And secondly, most of the, emotional regulation studies predominantly focus on learners. The remaining studies we see, they often are quantitatively driven, or they treat regulatory approach as one size fits all, which is, well, entirely incompatible with the essence of emotional phenomena. In the context of Iran, even, school settings have been largely overlooked, as, despite they are having the most populated, educational settings. So, the underlying question here is, how do L2 school teachers perceive their use of emotion regulation strategies in Iran? To conduct my study, I initially developed a concourse. Basically, so I used a theoretical approach, as I had a theory and an underlying theory. So I reviewed the literature, different studies, and I ended up with 62 statements as my concourse. And then to extract a well composed Q sample out of my concourse, I used Page and Morris framework 2014. So initially, I employed an approach which in my study was deductive and structured because, basically I had a theory behind it. And then I conducted a self-edit process So at this stage, I had some criteria at mind. For example, I wanted my statements to be relevant to the topic under investigation here, to be emotion regulation strategies. I wanted them to be meaningful, composed in a clear and concise manner, to just address a single item and be comprehensible, relevant to the context of my study, and to be balanced. So, for example, I had this statement in my concourse saying, when I get out of line at a school, I count to 10. So I thought to myself, and I searched around, that counting to 10 for teachers in front of schools are not really so relatable to teachers in Iran. And also, they don't even do that in the staff room. So I excluded this. And in the meantime, I thought that, people really don't have the same understanding about the emotion. So if they want to report about their use of emotion regulation strategies, they should be on the same page about, how and what, when the emotion has been elicited. So I thought about giving some examples about the situations that a certain emotion has been elicited in parentheses in front of the statement, but it would make it too lengthy. So my thesis advisor suggested to develop a manual. So the manual of emotion regulation strategy, or basically called MORS, has been born. So you can see it here that the sources were just empirical studies documented classroom incidents, and it was entries from teachers' online diaries reflecting emotional challenges, and also my own firsthand experience as a school teacher. Then I had my Q sample to be validated by 3 experts and run 5 pilot studies. In these 2 stages, I wanted to think about the simplicity, intelligibility, heterogeneity, and clarity of the statements. So they provided invaluable feedback for me. For example, one of the experts just offered that I present the statements in Persian, the native language of participants, but as Persian wasn't supported by online Q sorting websites, so I oversimplified the statement to be like A2, B1 level of proficiency. So all in all, there was so many wonderful feedbacks here that I, thought on them. And at the end, I had 33 statements as my Q sample. You can see the distribution of my Q sample statements across all the 6 categories of emotion regulation here. And then for the p-set selection, I used the mixed sampling approach. So for the first, I had maximum variation, which is the goal of emotion regulation. Initially, I purposefully selected teachers, and then from there, I used a snowball sampling to reach the number of participants I wanted. And at the end of the day, I had 32 participants for my study. You can see the demographic features of my pieces. So if you look closely, you can see that I had even number of female and male teachers, and also novice and experienced teachers. Also, I didn't want them all to be from the capital of Iran, but also from different urban and rural area. So I had 4 even course of teachers, 8 female novice, 8 female experienced, 8 male novice, and 8 male experienced. For the Q sorting procedure, I used Q-tip, as you can see in the left picture, as an example. So I set an online meeting for each participant, for not forcing them to share their screen, but for them to just ask their questions and clarify things, for them to feel more comfortable with sorting the cards. But and you can see the Q grid here, the ID Q grid, which is from -4 to +4. But as I collected the Q sorting, it was unforced. So you may, if you work with Q-tip, you may ask because it allows just forced Q configuration. So how I manage unforced one? So for the post-sorting interview question, you can see in the second question that I asked, did you want to put any of the cards in a particular column but couldn't because it was already filled? So I, gathered the answers and changed, the sorting manually. And then I asked, do you know any strategies that you or your teacher colleagues employ to regulate their emotions that were missing from the statements to just see if something was in mind and wasn't included? And also for the third, what is the emotion regulation strategy that you yourself use the most? So it was some sort of a, open-ended question, and I learned a lot from this question from my participants. For the data analysis, first of all, I had correlation matrix. You can see the correlation heat map here. So the cells with vibrant red and blue show a strong correlation, red being the positive correlation, blue being the negative correlation, and those with pale one showing a relatively weak correlation. And then I had to extract my factors. I employed PCA approach because I wanted to have precise, rather precise, result. And also I wanted to maximize the variance. So I used PCA, and then I had some criteria in mind to extract factors. So basically, Kayser-Godman criterion is scree-plot is the first. So you can see I don't know if you can see, but here in the script plot I have, you may notice that all of them have eigenvalue exceeding 1. So Kayser-Godman criteria, all 8 possible factors pass this criteria. But for the script plot, if you can see the last 3, they are basically the same. So I thought maybe the first 5 showing a more distinct characteristic. And then I had, smaller number of factors explain as much as variance as possible. So these 5 factors explain 58% of the variance. And then I had each retained factor to have at least 2 significant factor loading, 2 significant loading, and all of the 8, factors, possible factors had 2 significant loading. And at the end, I run Humphrey's rule, which you can see in this table, that the first 5 passed the test, but the last 3 just failed it. So I decided to retain and keep the first 5 factors and used Verimax method to rotate my factors. And in the factor matrix, I had 1 Q sorting to be confounded and 1 to be non-significant, but the remaining 30 Q sorting was significant and was retained. And then we get to the interesting part, which is the factor interpretation. So here I call my factors persona because it shows the way the teachers really behave regarding their, emotional management. So for the first persona, I had proactive teachers, advocates of authenticity. So both female and male loaded onto this factor, but more novice teachers who were working at public schools were more prevalent. But why calling them proactive teachers, advocates of authenticity? So you can see in this factor array that in the positive side of the Q grid, you can see situation selection, situation modification, and cognitive change. That means that these teachers really want to act prior to the emotional situation or while the situation. But also in the negative side, we can see that they really don't want to suppress their feelings. So they really want to stay authentic and true to their feeling. So this is how they treat it. And you can see an excerpt from, factor exemplar here, which really captures the, essence of this persona well. It is saying that if it is effective in the teaching process, I try to express my emotions. If it doesn't have an impact or if it's not relevant, I try to avoid it. So they want to express it if it is working, but if not, just, avoid it altogether. And for the second persona, I have selective teachers, advocates of self-reliance. So more, male experienced teachers who were working at different educational settings, like public, elite, or private, were more prevalent here. Calling them selective because in the factor array, in the positive side, you can see that they were proponents of cognitive change and situation selection. So I call them selective because they really want to select their situation or their own interpretation of the condition. So that's why they are selective. But they are self-reliance because they really don't want to rely on others, their social support or emotional support, as you can see in the negative side. But also we can see some blue cells because it seems that they don't want to rely on their colleagues, but maybe they kind of share some with their, loved ones. So for example, you can see in the quotes here that they are, for example, saying discussing issues with colleagues usually doesn't give you a 100% solution. Or it says that everyone just wants to say that their method is okay too. But the other, participant is saying, I rarely share my feelings with others, except maybe with someone special, like my spouse, occasionally. So they sometimes share their, worries with some close one, but not really with the colleagues. And then we have the third teacher persona, which is dynamic teachers, advocates of attendance. Female novice teachers working at public schools adhere to this persona, and they are dynamic because you can see that they are advocates of cognitive change and situation modification. So they really want to be involved in their situation and choose the strategy based on that. So they want to be engaged and they really don't want to step away from the emotional, thing that they have or the situation. So you can see in the negative side that the situation selection and response modulation is so prevalent. And then here you can see that in their interview, they address frequently researching the reason behind their behaviors or changing the subject. All of them involves being engaged with the situation, then think about what to do next, or asking another student or showing their emotions. This is being being advocates of attendance. And for the fourth persona, we have eclectic teachers, advocates of self-support. So male experienced teachers working at elite schools was vivid in this persona. And eclectic, well, actually, this persona was really interesting for me because you can see that the distribution of strategies is very different from other teacher persona. And it seems that they want to use, they don't have this fixed mindset about the strategies. Rather, they want to use different strategies in the place that it is, workable. So you can see that they sometimes use cognitive change, situation modification, or situation selection here and there, but they don't reject other strategies as well. So they are eclectic. You can see from these quotes that they are saying, for example, emotion regulation strategies depends on, person's personality type, or interestingly, someone is narrating that if we are the captains of the ship, its movement depends on the cooperation of the rest of the crew as well. So they really don't state about, fixed strategy, but rather being it a fluid experience for everyone. And at last but not least, we have avoidant teachers, advocates of realism. So female novice teachers working at public schools showed this persona, but this is really interesting because this is actually the first time that suppression is appearing in the positive side. And you can see that suppression and response modulation is in the positive side, and also situation selection. So they really want to avoid either the situation or the emotional impact it brings. And they really don't want to use cognitive change and seeking social support or attentional deployment. So if they are expressing their emotions, they want to say it what it is. They don't want to rethink about it or change in their mind. But they try to avoid it if they can. But if they couldn't, they just stay true to how, they experience and what they experienced. You can see here that a participant said that, for example, regarding my emotions, I try not to show all my feelings at the school. I aim to maintain a balanced state, even if I'm very upset or very happy. I try not to put too much pressure on myself. So you can see they really want to stay balanced and avoid things. And that's it. So if you are curious to find out your teacher persona, please feel free to reach out to me via email. And that's it. Thanks for your attention.
Wow, that was fantastic. Let's give you a
Thank you.
hand. Well done,
Oh, thank you.
Shaghayegh.
Thank you.
That was very interesting. Um, Shoo, let's see if there are any questions. I have 100, but I will first give other people a chance to speak. Are there any hands up? Now I must just see, or in the chat.
We do have hand up by Nico. Do we want to keep the screen up in case you want to refer back to slides? Would that be helpful for everybody? If not,
Yes.
Jean, you can unshare if you like or leave it up. It's entirely up to you.
I can sharing too if it's okay.
Yeah, leave it up.
Yes.
Nico has a question though.
Jean, thank you
Right,
so much for the
Nicole.
awesome presentation. I thought it was really good. I just have
Thank
two
you.
sort of questions or comments. But then the first one is, I like the visual demonstration of your factor arrays. I think that's super special because they're based on the strategies. So anyone who's also within the field of teaching and would want to know how educators deal with the issues, they'll see it immediately. So I also want to try and use that kind of approach to kind of categorizing the factor arrays. And then I just have a question with your criteria for selecting the concourse, the Moore's manual. Have you written about that in like a journal article, or can I find out more about it, like in your dissertation? Because that's super interesting. That a way of using a manual to select your concourse. I think
Mhm.
that's super. So yeah.
Thank you. So yes, about the visual demonstration, I should say that it helped a lot. Like because it was just seeing both the positive side and the negative side, and also the zero column. It was a bizarre picture, but because I had a theory, well, maybe it doesn't work with Q studies that doesn't have a theory underline or model. So because I had it, so I could just color code, all the cells, and then the factor was speaking to me with that. So I really recommend that if you had a theory. And also about the manual and the concourse, I let me just show that. Um, it wasn't for my concourse, but okay. Oh, okay, here is the slide. It was basically for the queue sorting stage because I wanted them to know about what was the thing. So maybe I can zoom in a little bit so you can see it. Is it better for you, or is it
Yes.
visible? Yes.
Yes, we can
Okay.
see.
Okay, so here I stated that not all sentences are, having some further explanation. But for example, there are some, emotions that are, being mistaken with each other. For example, frustration or, anger or annoyance. So there are different things, but people sometimes, mistake them for one another. So for example, feeling helpless or feeling frustrated. For example, I write, could happen when students don't follow your instruction or when side work takes too much of your time and energy as a teacher. I was really worried about this thing to be just about the relationship between the teacher and the student. But I really didn't want that. I wanted to give examples not from the within the classroom, but with the teacher and their colleagues and their peers and their staff members and everyone. So I provided one example for the teacher and student, and one for the teacher and other, members at the school. So it really, the example is very vivid. Why not the explanation? Because explanation is, very strict, and they really don't capture attention, so they leave it behind. But when you read that, you can remember about the time that you felt, frustrated or helpless or anything else. So it really worked, I guess. And I said about the sources. So I tried hard to find authentic examples that was real and vivid. So these were my resources. So that's it. I hope it helps. And thanks for your, kind, words, Nico.
Thank you.
That was wonderful. Yes, Vivian?
I'd like to piggyback off of Nico's question, because I understand in constructing the concourse, you have to have in mind some, I'm going to use the word categories or theories in mind to make sure your concourse is representative of what you're finding out in the population. So my question is, I noticed the fact that you have things color coded helped to make sure you covered all that. But my question is, did that somehow come into play when you were interpreting the actual factors? Did that in any way impede your ability to just look at the factors as they were presented and therefore categorize them? If not, no? How did that?
Yes. You are just saying that the color coding helped me with the interpretation of the factors?
Yes,
Is that the question?
Yeah, but wasn't your color coding based on making sure you categorize your when you put your concourse together, didn't you use that help you categorize the concourse, right? Did that in any way influence your translation of the interpretation of the data?
Yes. So in both concourse development and Q sample construction, I just coded the statements based on the strategy they were following under. So I had the strategies from the first stage, and when I had my factor arrays,
Yes.
I could easily, color code them because I had the strategies, from before, and it helped a lot. Like if I didn't color code it, I couldn't really interpret this. Like it took me ages. But here you can see the thing because, for example, in the first one, it was easier. But for example, the second one, it really helped because I could see that it has cognitive change, reappraisal, and situation selection. So they are selecting things.
Okay.
If it wasn't for the color coding, I wouldn't notice that. It would be very, very,
very
chaotic.
difficult to follow. Yes. And the final question relates to your novice, female novice teachers and your other female novice teachers. One of them, I forgot which factor array it was, were more dynamic and engaged, while the other novice seemed to be more, what is the word? I have a word here, more concerned about control and conservative. Yeah.
Yep. Yeah. So the thing is, the number of teachers who loaded onto this factor are important here. So for avoidant teacher, I only had 2 teachers loading onto factor 5, which was avoidant teacher. Has here, but it was important for me because we have avoidant teacher. Even with 2 participants, I thought that it is necessary to be stated. But for the third factor, which was also female novice, there were more people, like around, I guess, 8, who were loading onto dynamic teachers. I'm not just saying that male wasn't here or experienced or other people, but it was more, prevalent to have female novice doing this and the five factors. So, am I addressing your question right or
You,
not?
yes, you are. But the question I didn't get to ask you was, do you think that was a reflection of the fact that it was a public school versus a private school, or is there really any difference in your?
Uh, Well, yes, public and private. Well, I didn't have public and private having significant influence in my study. Just I had because here we have also public schools, and for the f fifth one also we have public schools. The only way that was different was for the second factor that it was male experience who were working at elite. But it really didn't work with just public and private sectors to be different very significantly. So
That's
I
good to
have
know. Just
uh,
yeah.
well, yes, I haven't noticed any because
Okay.
most of them were public.
Mhm.
And also because teachers who worked at public sectors also worked at public, the private sectors also worked at public. So that's why I guess I
Okay.
didn't notice anything because most of them really worked in public schools, alongside private or elites, educational settings. So I guess that's why.
Very good. Thank you.
Mhm.
Just want to say there's a question in the chat. Marian, thank you so much. I wonder if the study is in any way related to teacher student report or PSR professor student report. Marian, do you want to explain more or engage with about this question? Shaghayegh, do you want to
Mhm.
answer that?
Yes, sure. About this, like being related to teacher-student or a professor-student rapport. I didn't collect it about any sort of interview. I didn't have any interview with the students. So maybe that could add some further insights about how these, employment of emotion regulation strategies of teachers could influence the relationship between the teacher and their students. Um, but um, but it can help. Okay, I'm seeing that teacher being interviewed. They talked about their relationship. If you are asking this, sure. For example, I had a teacher in factor 3 that was basically saying that I don't want to be really, formal with my students. So I really want to be engaged and see things from their perspective. So they really had their own mindset about how to regulate emotion and how to have a relationship with their students. They provided examples, so I had most of them in my thesis, and these are some just selected quotes here. But definitely, yes, some of them even added humor to just make a better relationship. So themes of rapport have overlap with the finding of your study. Um, Maybe I'm not sure, but maybe studying and investigating teacher-student rapport with my findings could also help about digging deeper into understanding this phenomenon. Um, yes, yes. Yes, you're right. I think it could help, and there is, place for it to be, um, going further. So thanks for your comments. Oh, that's wonderful. So we can stay in touch. Just if you were willing, just
Yes.
contact me by email.
Yeah, maybe you can co-write a paper and do a
Yes.
Yeah.
co-presentation at next year's TEFL conference as
Yeah.
well.
Thank you. Yeah. Thank you, Mariam. Thank you.
That was really interesting. Diane, seeing that you know so much of teaching as well as Renata, what are your thoughts?
I think it's a very interesting study. I'm anxious to hear what Renata responds as well. I always encourage my students to use the categories as their second research question and to really go by the actual words in the sort, which would be interesting to see. But I haven't read the paper, so
Right.
I don't know how to respond to that.
Thank you. Thank you, Dan.
It's a lovely study, Shane. It's always great to work with teachers. I haven't worked much with emotions, so it's lovely to hear these aspects. Lots of people in our Australian group have published in emotion. I've used color coding for a long time. It's the way I make sense and organize my world. So it's nice to see you also do that. But I'm sure that in your analysis, you've also used other aspects in your interpretation, you've also used other parts of the analysis as the program would present to you. I look forward to reading the thesis when it's available. I noticed it was, I think, in the listserv. So
Yes.
make sure you include copies for us or a link somewhere. That'll be great. Congrats.
Oh, certainly. Thank you. Thank you, Renata. That means a lot.
I just want to see, are there any other questions? Isabel, comments, interesting things that you're noticing here that can maybe support you in your study?
I thought it was really interesting. Like, I really liked the manual you created. I think this was a really cool idea. I think I've at least not seen this for myself before, so I was quite impressed by that. I think it's like a really
Thank
good
you.
idea. Yeah.
Much appreciated, Isabel. Thank you.
So, I have a question, and I mean, I really enjoyed this, and would like I want to do the Q sort. So it seems sometimes that for every news study I read, or I want to like, can I be a participant? So my question actually relates to in the reflection or when in your interviews with post sort, whether what comments did people make about doing the sort and how that has influenced them? With
Well,
Do you understand what I'm saying is has
yes.
the experience of actually being part of your study changed their awareness of the way their emotions work in the classroom?
So you're basically saying if the finding of the study was informed to them or
No.
not, just
No.
Not the finding of the study. So for instance, when I did the one study and even the study that Nico and I are busy with now, people say by doing this sort, they suddenly have like a metacognition of what they actually doing that they didn't have before. So I wonder if any of that came from teachers to you.
Yes, well, as I remember, it was a bit difficult for me in some extent because when I was collecting data and asking people to sort the statements, teacher really their first thinking was about how their emotion regulation would affect their student. And I was making sure and asking them like even 3 times to rethink and think about themselves,
Mm.
how they do feel like, okay, I know that it has some, just effects on their students, and they have some, dynamics being changed. And so, but what about themselves? I really, am looking forward to see more people and teachers to think about their own mental health and see it more important and as important as their students. So it's very interesting that they don't. So when I was asking this, they were like, "Oh yes, so about myself, they didn't even think about that before." And it was really amazing for me and shocking for me. So I think after this, maybe they think, okay, I have feeling and I can do something with that. And it's not just about my students. I have to take care of myself
Yes.
to be able to take care of my students. And I'm glad for that. Thank
Yeah,
you.
that's very interesting.
I'm glad
Yeah.
you asked that question, Ro, because at the bottom of the screen, I'm trying to take the comment mentioned about it. This is being a psychological aspect. Where is it now? It says, this always
Yeah.
been my interest. The psychological aspect of teaching is like the psychology of everything else. People don't think about the fact that how they feel matters because we're so focused on how everybody else is feeling and how everybody else is doing. And as Sheen says, it speaks to self-care, which is such a void of that in our society, not just here, but all over the world. So I'm glad you asked that question, Ro, and Sheen for
Exactly.
responding. Yeah, very good.
And to add to
Exactly.
what you're saying, and what Shaghayegh
Mhm.
has just said, is that as a teacher, you know the focus should, there's this normative idea that it's all about the students. So you just have to, whatever you need to do, you need to do it because it is about the support of the students. So, and I think that, um, and this is for me part of the magic of Q is the deep reflection and
Mhm.
introspection that it forces you to have. So it's a fascinating field, and the way you did it, I really enjoyed this. I
Good
see
study.
there's another comment of Mariam. This may be about facilitating effective communication with students to develop a sense of connectedness. Yes. Therefore, more emphasis is required to be put on positive, supportive environment in any educational context, I think. Yeah, I don't know if you want to comment on that. That's very, very true.
Yes, I also agree with that. So it's really important, and also I wanted it, as I answered, that I wanted for initially they think about how they feel,
Yeah.
because if I added the students' relationship and how it affects the student just learning environment, they in a snapshot, they would think about the classroom, not their own mental health. So I
Mm.
didn't add that variable into my study because
Um,
this very reason.
yeah.
So, but that is very true, and this could be, a very good point. So thank you, Mariam, for bringing it up.
We have Joanna who has her hand up I guess she
Mhm.
has a question or comment. Joanna?
Yeah, great. Thank you, Sheen, for the great study. I
Yeah.
wanted to sort of add one thing and then ask a question that was related, I think. It might be that some of this is more related to the idea of emotional labor, which is true for any workplace situation, and the work that's done. I'm putting just a broad definition in the chat for people who don't know about emotional labor,
Yeah.
but the work of managing one's own emotions because the role says you need to. And I'm thinking, kind of wanted to bring together what Diane was saying about how we do factor interpretation in Q, meaning, and I know you were testing a theory of sorts, but I was wondering, I just wanted to push a bit with that question because if one of those interesting insights that you had was the teachers reflecting on the fact that they didn't weren't used to reflecting on their own feelings. And so that the subjectivity is about what they wanted to reflect back to you. And what it sounds like what they wanted to reflect back to you was that they weren't comfortable trying to think about that, which kind of to go back to Brown and the ways in which we come with this abductive reasoning, we come with this kind of hypothesis, but we allow the subjectivity to express their subjectivity, to express to us, what the findings are.
Mhm.
And so I'm wondering, yeah, how you might, if you were to sort of pause in your mind a bit, the original theory you were testing, and just think about the experience of what they reflected back to you, what might be one more layer, let's say, of your factors that you thought, and teach us something
Yes.
about subjectivity.
Okay, so I think adding another layer would be like I really focus on teachers' emotion regulation literature. But as you might know that there is a wide pile of literature on psychology, not just teachers' psychology. So maybe, for example, for the seeking social support, I was thinking about adding this layer. So, for example, we have there is very rare cases that they use social support, but maybe it could be reevaluated. Just, stepping away from the theory that I was kind of testing. So, for example, social support could come in different ways. So, for example, some of the teachers don't do that with just sitting with each other and talk about their concerns, but rather some of them would do things, and while they're doing things, they would talk about things while they are doing, for example, running some errand in the city, or just rethinking about seeking social support, or even reappraisal, just like humor. I really couldn't just think about how humor could be associated with different strategies. So if I really wanted to just don't think about the model, it would be, another layer, which is very broad and very richer, I guess. But gross process model is very well known in the emotion regulation, field. But it could also be done without that. But I'm not sure if the, scholars would accept that, but hopefully so. So.
Excellent. I see Jeanette also has her hand up. Jeanette.
Hi, yeah, I've got a question, just written it down because I forget things. I'm interested, and I think it's sparked from something that was said last week. At what point in your study did you know it was going to be a Q study? Did you? I was trying.
Like from the beginning, actually, no. I wanted to have a qualitative because I didn't know about the Q like then. But when I find out about the Q, and also let me just introduce Dr. Farsani, who is my thesis advisor to you. He's actually the person who introduced me to Q methodology. As I said in the beginning of the session, his favorite example in teaching mixed method research is, the story of blind man and the elephant, which came from, Rumi, the renowned poet, Iranian poet. So that is sort of really is helpful to understand the vitality of humans, exploring human subjectivity. So when I was exposed and encountered to Q, I thought that it was a magical moment because it really fitted emotion. And it was the thing that I was looking for. So, huge thank you to Dr. Farsani for introducing me to that. And yes, it really fitted so perfectly. That's it. But at the beginning, no, I was looking for qualitative, and I was thinking it's a bit mundane because, qualitative study on emotion has been done, and it didn't added another layer. I felt like it isn't something new, but hopefully I I had some support, and Q is helping
I
so
was going
much.
to ask, but two things I'm going to say is your presentation is fantastic, but
Yes.
you so lit up when you spoke about Q, and that's amazing. It's and that was my other question: how much support did you have learning about it? But then you've answered that. It's been a really good presentation. Thank you. I've learned a
Oh,
lot.
thank you.
Mm.
Thank you so much, Janet. Well, about the support I have for Q, I was lucky to have my advisor to introduce me to Q. But for the details, I can say that like first session I was in the Zoom queue. Maybe Vivian remember that. I was just saying that I basically like read things like literature a lot.
Yes.
And it was very, very difficult for me to figure everything out like on my own about Q because it's just, Q is very new in Iran and, in my faculty and everything. So I really have to just dig into this literature and learn things. It took me a lot, but it was my thesis, so I had to. And when you had to, you find a way. So
Yes.
that's it.
And I'm glad to see that you have reading as one of you're a bookworm.
Oh, yeah.
So what would we do
Thank you.
without this amazing? There are so many amazing publications
Mhm.
that have supported us
Yes.
in our study. So well done on that. We have 3 minutes left. Oh, wonderful. Dr. Fasani says he's
Mm,
proud of you. That is what a
Yes.
wonderful
Thank
comment.
you. Thank you so much.
We,
I
we
appreciate
Um,
it.
I wonder, Sue, do you maybe want to make a comment or two?
and an announcement, Sue, about the conference. Steve?
Sure. Oh, I think this is a great study, and I really liked how um, she found a feeling of connection to
Yes.
each of her viewpoints. I think that that's really important, and sometimes that just kind of gets missed as we report our findings. Also, everybody should have gotten an email recently about acceptance of their abstracts. So, and whether or not you're planning on attending virtually or in person. If you're like me, you're still trying to figure out what the world has in store. So I'm not, I want to go. The question is, can I go?
Yes.
So, but those are my 2 cents.
Yeah. Yeah. Uh,
Yeah, I think many of us are in the same boat.
yeah. We were talking about
Um,
we were talking about that at the beginning of the session about the question mark being able to travel. So not that we don't want to travel because we do. It's just can we travel? It's
yeah.
still a little tenuous. Is really still up in the air. So yeah.
Just something about just a last moment about that, Sue. We submitted two different abstracts. Um, so I've received a letter, but I'm not sure which abstract has been accepted. Um,
Okay. It's
I'll
it's
just email.
probably both of them.
Okay,
But you can just email Stephanie to make
I
sure.
will do that. I will
Yeah.
do that. So I think we on the last few seconds. So I just want to
Yeah.
really shout out again to Shaghayegh. That was so interesting. This was one
Thank
of
you.
the
Another round of
most interesting.
applause. Yes. Yeah.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Uh-huh.
Roll up. Thank you.
Um,
Thank you. May I add something here?
Of course.
Like, just came to my
Absolutely.
mind. For maybe you have noticed, I don't know if the people have noticed, but about the pictures. So I really wanted the picture to capture the persona. So I prompted that AI, and these pictures are just created yeah, just specifically for the persona. So it was kind of interesting, the process to have these pictures just specific to this persona. And so, yeah, that's it. Just a little detail about my presentation.
Yeah, I think that's very
Great.
clever, and I think it's important to point that out to the audience, and I'm glad you did. Yes, that's most appropriate. Very good. Well
And
done.
I think there's a paper even in that, in how you
Yes.
develop the how you used AI for that. That might be,
Oh,
but
really?
Sue is the
Just
person to speak
that's
about
clever.
that. I really think that's a very intriguing way
Yeah.
to look at it.
And
Yes.
if you go back to the personas of factor 3 and factor 4 for the female, the novice, how they have two different I'm going to say dispositions. If you go into the comments, I bet you'll find something in there about as to why they behave the way why do they feel the way they're feeling. There's got to be something in there.
Mhm.
That's why I asked that question about that. Emotion, psychological,
Thank
something
you.
going on with the feelings of
Mhm.
these people. And that's another paper, by the way. Okay.
Thank you.
But
Sure,
I
I will
just want to
do
then
it.
let me thank everybody for joining. This was a
Yes.
super wonderful presentation. Thank you very much for making the time, and we're looking forward to seeing your presentation at the conference, whether it's virtually or in person.
Yes, thank you. I will see you in the Q conference, everyone who is attending. I'm attending virtually as well. So see you there. Thank you.
Awesome. Thank
Thank
you.
you
Have
for
a great
coming.
week, everybody. Bye-bye.
Okay,
Have a great
Thank you
week.
very
bye.
much. Take care, everybody.
I'm going to pause.